Okay, I'm William Dawes. I am 20. My degree is Arts Law, and I'm running with the colour blue, or a variation of blue, I can't remember the specific name. And the logo is Will and Grace, because I'm not sure if you're aware, but I've decided to engage in a cross-branding exercise with another candidate, Grace O'Brien.
We'll start off. How does that...
I think we might come back to that later. I think do you want to ask a few questions first?
Yeah, okay, well...
We might get into that because we do have a few questions about that.
Yeah, just in general, what are your thoughts about the current state of the union?
Well, from what I understand, it's a pretty tightly run ship. And in terms of the candidates, all they can really offer as students is to make sure it doesn't become divorced from the student perspective and their regular injection of creativity. But otherwise than that, it seems to be very well run and yeah.
And kind of bouncing off that, what do you think the biggest problem facing the union board now is at the moment?
The biggest problem facing the union board probably ties into sort of Grace and I's broad policy approach, which is we think we should move away from any suggestion of the universalisation of access, which seems to be the be-all and end-all of last year, and make sure that what the union does is that it increases the utility and benefits on offer from having an access card to make sure that it appeals to the widest possible number in the student body and offers the most opportunities and the broadest range of, yeah.
Okay, I might actually just follow that up now because there's not really anything about that in your candidate policy statement, which that seems like now that might be quite a big
yeah, I can understand that can, well, basically, how about I do this by explaining my engagement with Grace. We spoke together and compared our policy statements, and although there's no articulation of that broad umbrella statement that I said, you can see there's a general theme in my policies, which is that it's increasing the usefulness of access and increasing what's on offer, whether it be through trying to incorporate satellite campuses, making sure they have more use of it, which I articulate in terms of my conservatorium policy, or the better commercial services and the renegotiation of contracts with existing vendors, etc.
Okay, well, seeing as you've outlined this now, and it seems like the relationship with Grace will be quite fundamental to the way you're going to run and the way you're going to brand yourself, I think we might ask a few questions.
This relationship.
Yeah, that strategy.
Like, when you say cross-branding exercise, that's never been done before, to my knowledge. How do you...
It's never been done before, sorry. Did you say?
The cross-branding.
Yeah, well, obviously we understand it's very important to the union that the campaigns are individual. We've passed this with the relevant people in the union, and they said that's... Yes, they have said that's totally fine. Because it's not a pooling of resources in any way, it's a pooling of efforts. And because we saw an opportunity, my name's William, her name's Grace, Will and Grace. It's as simple as that, and we thought when we were faced with the inordinate and unprecedented number of candidates, we thought that's a good way to distinguish us. And whilst we're both campaigning to win, we thought that would provide a good opportunity for at least either one of us to win.
When you're saying you're not pulling together resources, do you mean that you're not, is your cap for the cross-branded campaign going to be the normal $700, or is it going to be the...
Oh no, the individual campaigns, yeah, have their caps. Yeah.
Have you both taken the $500 offered by the union?
Yes, we have.
So, how is that not a pooling of resources? If you're getting two $500 grants and you're both running them together, especially considering it's not unlikely that one of you would get elected and the other wouldn't, how is that not a sharing of resources?
Well, it's not a sharing of resources in that my campaign, I want people to vote one for me. Her campaign, she wants people to vote one for her. It's just useful in terms of, as I've said, the branding.
I mean, when people are going into elections, will they be saying, your slogan actually has another candidate's name in it? It seems like that's a very clear, people who are going to lecture
Yeah.
after you and talk about you, they're going to talk about Grace as well.
Will and Grace.
And
Yeah.
so the shirts they're wearing, the money that's gone to your campaign is going to directly benefit her campaign.
Yeah, I can see that. But obviously the returning officer hasn't seen any problem with that or any conflict with the union regulations. I can't deny that it offers us a benefit. But I think it's good to show a sense of, that people can work together, and I think it's beneficial in the long run.
So will you have the exact same t-shirts, exact same...
No. Mine will be blue. Hers are, well, she can reveal her colour, but it's pink, It's a variation of pink.
So you'll have the same slogan
And logo?
Yes.
Oh.
and the same logo?
Well, it's just going to be simply Will and Grace for Union Board.
Okay, I think maybe it might be good to jump to a few questions about, considering it ties to this, about your political background.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you might just ask firstly, are you a member of any political faction on campus?
I'm a member of the Young Liberals, and I am a member of SULC.
Are you in any particular faction of the Young Liberals?
No, not in particular. I'm just a branch member and, club member.
And I'm guessing Grace is similarly in the similar...
Yeah, I've seen her at a few events, Young Liberals. I think we actually debated together in the Liberal and Labor debate. That's how we met and it started our friendship. So yes.
Well, with regards to your Liberal affiliation, do you support compulsory student unionism? Do you support SSAF?
Compulsory students.
Voluntary students.
So let's start with compulsory student unionism. Do you still support compulsory student unionism?
Well, this is why we articulate our policy in terms of not universalising access, because we think that removes the choice to become a member of the union. However, that doesn't say we don't think the union offers amazing benefits and that it should be on offer to the largest possible people and should appeal to the largest possible people, but we do believe in choice, essentially.
So I'm going to take that as a no.
No.
Okay. Do you think that will bring you into tension with other board directors, with the CEO of the board, of the union I should say, and the staff, given that compulsory student unionism would be such a big financial windfall and benefit for the student union? It would seem to be in its direct interests.
And also a policy of the USU.
It's a policy of the
to
USU.
support, yeah, in the Constitution.
Well, as I understand, it's not compulsory at the moment. It's reliant upon access card.
Sorry, what I meant was that the belief in compulsory student unionism is a core policy of the union to advocate for removing...
Well, then that would bring us into conflict, but surely the point of the union board is to facilitate disagreements and, I'm not going to bring a combative approach to the union. I'm all about facilitation, negotiation and talking to people and getting the best result. But I think the union board has the capacity to facilitate that kind of conflict.
Okay. We might move on to SSAF now, which is the current funding arrangement. When it was introduced in 2011, it was vigorously opposed by the Liberals and the coalition in opposition. There's a very high chance that if you were to become a board member, they would come to power in Parliament, and they may well have control of the Senate, they may well be able to repeal SSAF. Would you support the repeal of SSAF?
Yes, I would report this.
Okay, that would cause the union to immediately lose around $3 million in revenue.
Although,
can you just tell me that would mean a lot of very expensive coffees or a lot less clubs and societies? Can you tell me exactly where that $3 million will get cut from?
Well, quite frankly, I think, although I can say I support the removal of SSAF, running for student union isn't running for a legislative body, and I have no role in the removal of that. Because my sentiments might suggest that I remove that doesn't mean I have to justify where that has to come from. I do see that SSAF is very important to the, the good commercial running of the union, and that it benefits it greatly, and I do see the benefits.
So if you were on board and SSAF was repealed, you would not help out in any kind of campaign against it, as was seen when voluntary student unionism was introduced?
No, I would not actively help out.
Do you think that's in the best interest of the union?
Well, potentially not, in terms of SSAF, yeah.
Do you, considering the union board is to a large extent a binding body, if the USU decided as a group to support campaigns against SAF, to bring back SAF, so you would not be involved in these campaigns at all? How would you see that as like to do with your role as a union board director, to follow the policies of the union board?
Well, look, I can't say what I will do in the future, but as I've indicated, my sentiments would suggest that I wouldn't campaign. And so your question is, how would I justify that as
If
a...
the board made a decision, you would not be able to speak out against it publicly. You would be bound
Yeah.
to. Would you be comfortable with that?
I would be
Does it
comfortable with that, absolutely, too, yeah.
Okay. I think we might just pop back to the overlap with Grace. There have been accusations made, not just by people from the outside, but also by people from the inside of the Sydney University Liberal Club,
All right.
that there was a strategy. There's several candidates running with a quite similar political background to you, which seems unusual because it seems like they would cannibalise each other's support. There had been the accusation that this was a plan to try and funnel support to one candidate at the end of the campaign, to funnel resources in the form of preferences. All the preferences would flow to that candidate, that sort of thing. All the campaigners on the ground would effectively be campaigning for one person. How do you respond to that accusation? Because it seems like this Will and Grace thing that you're running with would fuel...
would fuel those accusations? Yeah. Okay, well, I know for a fact that Josh Crawford, I think, is the other one who's SULC person. He... And Kanika Bartra? Yes, okay, well, I know Josh Crawford for a fact hasn't applied for the funds. And Kanika has totally different campaign in mind. So I really can't see them funneling resources in any tangible way towards the joint branding exercise that we're exercising.
So there's no involvement at all with Kanika's campaign or Josh Crawford's campaign?
They're totally...
So to what extent is the SULC leadership involved in your campaign or their campaign? Do you know at all?
Well, in that they've put their support behind Grace and I. That's about it. There's no direct sort of constant involvement in that sense.
Okay, given that you've just announced to us now what is quite a different vision of your run for union and your policies, are there any other policies that are important to you individually or your campaign that weren't mentioned in the booklet?
Yes. In terms of... everything basically ties into the general idea of, increasing the utility of access. And one of the greatest benefits I see of access is clubs and societies and the diversity of, peculiar and really obscure interests that facilitates on campus. And Grace and I have, discussed this, and we see that it is possible to streamline and simplify the funding arrangements for clubs and societies, and there needs to be a review of the process of the foundation of societies, because I've spoken to friends and they contemplate that it takes probably up to a year to bring a society together and then get to the stage where you can start bringing people into a society. And so we think that if we can, on the board, facilitate that kind of change to make it simpler and easier to have more clubs and societies, then that's another way to...
Wouldn't more clubs and societies cost more money?
Cost more money.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're looking at a general reduction in expenditure and streamlining.
Oh, no, sorry. I mean streamlining in terms of the process by which you apply for money, in terms of club treasurers have to deal with.
What in particular do you find problematic with the way the treasurer requiring funding systems works?
Well, I don't know the specifics, but I understand there's a multiplicity of forms and processes that take a long time and make it very difficult for the club executives.
Go through that process?
Not personally, but I'm very conscious of many people who have. And Grace is probably much more personally invested in this policy, but I very much
So
support
is
it.
this your policy or Grace's policy?
It's with collaboration. It's
Sorry, to go back to the relationship between you and Grace, was that decided before you nominated, or was that after?
It was after we realised the plethora of candidates, and we had toyed with it. We joked about Will and Grace, but then we thought, hey, that would be probably a sound exercise in
So when you
cross-branding.
made your candidate statements for the booklet, was that before?
We hadn't quite refined it yet.
Okay. Given, just to go back to this clubs and societies issue, given that there are several hundred clubs and societies on campus, from the most niche, ukulele society to some very big ones, political societies, a very broad spectrum, many number, do you think it's really necessary? Is this a big problem for the union, that clubs aren't coming up fast enough? They seem to cater to many interests already.
Well, I see it as something which is auxiliary to the general umbrella policy statement that I articulated at the beginning, closer towards the beginning of this interview, which is to increase the benefits that can come from the union.
Okay. You said you wanted to move away from universal access and to provide better services. So presumably maybe increasing the level of service, which might come with an increase in cost. Is that a fair understanding of what you might be saying?
Well, we think that if you increase what's on offer, then more people are going to go for it.
Can you be a bit more specific about what you want to increase?
What I want to increase?
Yeah.
Well, I think by expanding, as I've said, the clubs and societies, and one clear articulation of an opportunity to expand the uses of access I made in my statement on my idea. I think it's in the union's purview to facilitate transport between satellite campus and here for conservatorium students, because I'm unique in that I have a number of perspectives. I did a semester at the conservatorium and I know it exists in splendid isolation, or rather, it's bad isolation, and what I understand is that performance students there, they're really hankering for opportunities to perform to people other than their classmates. And I think that the main campus can provide venues and the union can provide that for them. And I think it can facilitate the transport between main campus and the conservatorium, which is all part of, I think, the union's general purpose, which is to facilitate cultural enrichment and relationships between students at different campuses. I think it offers a lot of benefits potentially. And I think that's one way in which we can come up with ways in which we can expand the uses of access. So say if you had concerts here with conservatorium students, access cards could mean you go for free. I mean, it's not a new idea. That I know the Film Society, or at least the History Society, they screen films, and if you have access, it's free or cheaper. It's a concept that's been done before, but I think this way it allows for satellite campus students to experience the benefits of the union, and therefore more students to experience the benefits of the union.
Going back to your desire to kind of improve the finances of the union by increasing services, one of your policies is to create more access deals outside of the outside of campus. Do you believe that this will encourage people to eat off campus and therefore reduce the revenue the union makes by selling foods on campus through their own outlets?
Well, I think that's just part of my general sentiment of providing choice, and I think that if students see the broad range of possibilities where they can use the access card, then more people are going to purchase it, which surely provides a financial benefit for the union if they have more people investing in their initial card.
There's quite a few access partners already, kind of in the inner west. What specific businesses do you think the union should target to do access deals with it doesn't already?
I wouldn't know any specific businesses. I just think to the general policy of expanding its usefulness. That's
Well,
what
I mean, do you know the boundaries of its usefulness currently?
the boundaries of its
As in, do you know what kind of places you can get with access
I understand
now?
there are a number of venues around Broadway to that extent, and Glebe, and but you know, they're few and far between as far as I've experienced personally.
There's quite a few as well in Newtown.
Yeah.
Stands far as even Stanmore Macca's, you can get discounts.
All right.
The cinemas at Newtown, quite a few pubs. I mean, so there's no particular place that you think students would definitely want to buy an access card if they knew you could get discounts there, or any type of place or type of area maybe?
No, I just believe that I think it's fairly intuitive that if there is more choice, more people, that will appeal to more people's particular tastes.
But I mean, there's only a certain amount of access cards you can sell on campus. Don't you think there's any possibility that this will actually create a revenue loss in the end, when you basically max out the amount of access card holders you can have, and then you start losing revenue within the campus because people start eating food off campus? Don't you think, I mean, like, there's only so much money you can make from access cards. And also considering that the union is moving towards universalising access, if that happens, do you think it will be in the union's best interest to expand off campus?
Well, if they universalise access, to me that seems to remove a huge source of revenue, and it doesn't seem intuitive to me why they would do that. And yeah, that would perplex me as to why they would do that, as opposed to try and expand its usefulness, and therefore its appeal. Why its appeal?
Do you think it's a problem that because access is relatively expensive for many students, they are locked out of union activities, union discounts, and so therefore a lot of the poorer students on campus, less wealthy, aren't going to have access to discounts or to club societies and all those sorts of things?
It is. It certainly does have the capacity to exclude a lot of people and make it inaccessible, ironically. But look, if you remove any kind of investment from the people, it's how I can see that as inhibiting the union's ability to provide the benefits in the first place. It seems to be a vicious cycle to me.
But if there was a funding model, which the union is trying to move towards, I believe, of universal access where everyone could have it for free, and it wasn't too
and
much
they got the
revenue.
money from somewhere else.
Yeah, say SAF increased or something like that, or they
SAF
negotiated, let's say theoretically they negotiate an extra couple $1 million out of Sydney University sports and fitness, you know, or something
Well,
like
that would be fantastic.
So you would support universal access if it was...
If they took money away from sports and fitness, yes. Yeah, not an increase in SAF, but you know, just redirecting it from them.
Yeah.
One of the other policies is to basically improve the services within the union on campus, such as better food and more drinks. This has been promised by multiple candidates in the past. Why do you believe the board has failed to deliver this in the past, and why do you think you're more capable of delivering it now?
That's a tough question. Yes, I understand it's sort of it seems like a fatuous statement, but look, it's just our ideal goal in terms of, as we've said, the umbrella policy statement. What do I think would better equip me to do this? I really don't know. Yeah, I think that's all I can say on that.
It seems like quite a lot of your ideas for policies are not bad ideas, but it feels like a lot of them you haven't really looked at any of the costing or any of the details about them. Do you think that, are you going to have more details released about them worked on throughout the campaign, or are you just going to keep this umbrella
details
approach?
Through the campaign? Well, look, I don't think there's any more time to sort of thrash it out and expand upon them. In my approach as candidate, and I think the same as Grace, we're candidates, not yet union board directors, and we're still students. And we understand we may not seem 100% acquainted with the costings, financial specifics, but that's because we're not running as accountants, we're students. We're trying to offer a policy approach that is beneficial for the union. We understand that when people win, they go through programs of training them for the role of candidate, and we see that as a bridge that you cross at that point if you win. But at the moment, we're still primarily students and candidates. So we can't acquaint ourselves with those kinds of specifics.
We were going to ask you which other candidate you most identified with. I think that's become pretty clear. So,
Beyond Grace.
yeah.
Who else?
Beyond Grace. Well, I suppose the obvious choice is Josh Crawford.
What about on the current union board at the moment?
On the current union board, I sympathise with a lot of what I've read about Zach Thompson in Oni, his statements.
Okay. And who would you vote for as president of the union if you were to be
As
elected?
president of the union.
Yeah.
Probably the same person.
Zach.
Yeah.
Zach?
Is he the one in the... No, he's already honorary secretary. Sorry, yeah, that's
He'll
stupid.
be retiring, so he
Yeah,
won't-
that's quite. Yeah, quite. Well, the junior ones include Hannah.
Basically
The
candidates.
5 were elected last time, so...
Yeah, the
Hannah
5 that were
Ross,
elected
Aaron
last-
Charles, Sophie Stan.
Reese. No, he was already
No,
elected.
Tom Rowley.
Tom Rowley.
Tom Rao. I'll probably go for Hannah.
Great. All right. Do you think the union should have overt political stance? For example, being pro-choice or something like that?
No, my initial instinct is I don't think it should have ideological. I don't see room for ideological campaigns.
Okay. So
That could, to the exclusion of swayed portions of the campus, to make them feel isolated or excluded.
how do you think your then ideological background, as someone who identifies as a liberal, and probably, I assume, has a pretty clear set of ideological and ethical values, how do you think that will influence your tenure as board director?
How do I think that will... Well, I think that I see as core to being a young liberal freedom and choice. So I'm not going to offer ideological judgments on people's choices as long as it's not to the exclusion of others' choices. It's all down to choice, and I'm quite willing to facilitate people's different ways of viewing things.
Well, going on from that, the USU is currently looking into an ethical investment policy and a corporate social responsibility.
Ethical investment policy.
Ethical, like, isn't only investing in ethical.
So
Such
it
a
would
fair
make
trade.
a decision about what kind of, it has revenue from investments it makes, has
Yeah.
a portfolio of shares and that sort of thing. And this would be discerning what companies you invest in. So potentially you might not invest in a coal company or in tobacco or gambling, whatever you judge was ethically
To
unsound.
be ethically unsound.
Do you believe this is within the purview of the union boards?
I think so. I think it's possible to come to an objective understanding of what's ethically sound. And some of those things you've listed sound to me ethically people you'd want to avoid.
Do you think this is a political stance for the union to do this?
I don't think that's political. It seems you can come to an objective standard on those things.
So quite a few board directors argued in this case, and I think it would apply to a lot of other cases as well, that the board cannot make objective moral decisions about these kind of things. Would you disagree with that?
It depends what kind of groups you're seeking to exclude from, like, what's in contemplation. You mentioned tobacco.
Potentially, like, arms companies. Or,
Arms companies.
You know,
The military or...
military.
I don't think it actually matters the example, because the argument they were making was we can't make...
We can't make
we
an
are not in a
objective
position
standard.
to make moral judgments of this kind, and it's not our job to do that.
Well, that face off, it seems a bit of a cop out. I think you can reach a reasonable understanding of that. Yeah.